Hello, and welcome to another episode of Startup Lantern. This is a podcast about entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. We're here to try to help you figure out if you're ever thinking about starting up your own company, this is the right place to come. Before we go into anything else, I just want to let you know that we're not lawyers. We don't even play one on TV. We're just a couple of guys who have been through this a number of times. I personally have had a number of different startups. My cohort here has actually worked with a lot of startups as well. And we're hoping to impart some of the information that we've learned along the way to make things a little bit easier for you. So my name is Drews McFarlane, and let my co-host introduce himself.
And I'm John Duran. Pleasure to meet you. Welcome to our show.
So in today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is the preparation that you have to do in advance of writing your business plan and going in and visiting your first VC. Now, we covered in a previous episode about the 3 Ps, the plan, the product, and the personnel, and established that most of the people who are going to be watching this are probably going to be falling into that product type of organization. So in this circumstance, we're going to be talking specifically about product-based organizations and what do you need to do in preparation for going out and having everything done inside of your business plan, so that you can make the best possible impression on the VCs when you actually meet them.
Today, we're talking about everything you should be researching before you build your business plan. And that document's one of the things you need to have ready for a VC meeting. But long before you begin research to build that plan, you need a good idea. Now, Drews, I know you've seen your share of startup companies and you've been a part of a number of startup companies. Where do the best ideas typically come from?
Like everything, it usually starts off with what you know best already. It's all well and good if you have an idea for a great new kind of dog food, but if you've never owned a pet before, there's probably a lot about that industry that you don't know that you're going to have to come up to speed with pretty quickly in order to have that actually work out. So if you start off with what you actually do know, maybe something that you do every day, something that is involved in your existing job, and you look down and you see that, like, boy, this is really way more complex than it needs to be, or I do this, or this should exist, but it doesn't seem to exist anywhere. Those end up being the best ideas because you know it so well because it's part of what you're already familiar with. It cuts down on the amount of looking that you have to do to try to figure out different competition. If you just know the market well enough to know, I've looked for this, I can't find it anywhere. So those end up being the best ideas. It also gives you a better clue as to how needed that, whatever that idea is, how needed is that going to end up being? How painful is it going to be to people out there in the industry if they don't have it? So it always works best if you start off with what you already know.
So I've seen a lot of similar things, Drews, and I have lots of friends who have great ideas, but the best that I ever run across typically come from someone who was doing a job and recognized a better way of doing that job, or of a product that was needed to make the job easier for those around him. So again, very much like you said, those seem to be the very best ideas. What's next? What should you be researching after you've got your good idea? Where do you begin?
Well, the first thing I would do is be honest with yourself with this idea about who and what your competition really is going to end up being in this circumstance. Sometimes the competition is simply doing nothing. And that sometimes that is the hardest competition that you can go face to face with. Is this problem serious enough that they would actually do this rather than I'll just live with it. That can be a very hard thing to overcome. But also, it may not come. Your competition may not actually come from where you think it would normally come from. It's not always a for-like type of product that's out there. And an example I like to give is if you go back, and I'm kind of dating myself with this reference, but for people who remember the old Palm Pilot, the little PDA accessory, when they first did their prototype and their mock-up, and they went out and they started talking to venture capitalists about this new device, they had their choice of what they would show as being their competition, because like the Apple Newton existed. There were other things like the Sharp Zorus, and all kinds of little pocket organizers, electronic organizers that were out there. But they didn't use any of those people as a competition. The competition that they chose to talk about was a pen and paper. That was still by far the biggest competition, for that type of a device. Most people, most companies who had tried to create something in that line had already tried it and failed. It wasn't getting great adoption, so that really wasn't their competition. Their competition was getting people to substantially change from something that is inherently very simple, which is a pen and paper. So understanding who is your actual competition. Sometimes you may be in a circumstance where you're lucky enough to have somebody that's really out there. There's a product that does this, but there's this this gap at the tail end that they're not addressing this market with it, and maybe I can go in there and now you have something that looks more like what you would traditionally think of as being competition. But again, be very honest with yourself. Think outside of the box with who ends up being your competition in this circumstance, and everything that you're going to be dealing with is going to be some sort of variation on that. Now, keep in mind, I give you this advice, but there's an old reference of Steve Jobs where he says, "I never really focus on the competition. I focus on what our customers need." But knowing what your competition is doing will help inform what your customers need. Some of that stuff that your competition does, they will need and they are doing. Sometimes it's what they're not doing, and going out and providing that ends up being the best option.
So if I'm dealing with competition, is there anything particular important that the venture capitalists are going to care about with competition? I mean, is it good to have really strong competition? That's an old adage that competition is good for business, or is it better to have an idea that's so unique you're blazing new trails?
That's actually a really good question, because in some ways, having some level of competition will help people understand that there is an actual market for it. If you can point to, company A over here is doing half of it, and I just want to do the other half that's not being addressed, it kind of shortcuts you to that level. If nobody has thought about doing this ever, you have to start off with building a really good case that there really is a market here, just nobody's addressing it at all. So it ends up being a little bit more complicated. But if there is somebody that's in your space, then the barrier is going to end up being, what's to stop my competition from, if they're already doing the first half of the idea, what's to stop them from just throwing a few additional resources and doing the other half of the idea. And that's where having some sort of intellectual property that you can defend ends up becoming really important. And that's for venture capitalists who are going to be very interested in that specifically. You're like interested in the idea and having something that's going to be a paradigm shift or whatever. They want to make sure that they're not investing in something that can just be developed pretty easily by another organization that's already has a head start on you. So thinking about patents early on. Now, a lot of people get a little bit more worried about patents than perhaps what they should be, because they were like, well, gee, what I've got, it doesn't seem like it's patentable. Well, don't sell yourself short. And you may not even know what's patentable about an idea when you start, but you need to be keeping your thoughts open as you're thinking through what the solution is. And an example I give there is something that Amazon has actually been widely ridiculed when they first came out with the idea of the single button purchase, the buy now. Like you hit that button and everything's done. They got a patent on that, and they got ridiculed because boy, that seems like it's pretty obvious. Well, the idea of having a single button to make the purchase is obvious, but that's not actually what they patented. What they patented was the entire process, all the things that end up coming into line after you hit that button to make that actually work. So the button is the easiest part. The button itself wasn't the patentable part of that process. It was all the things that went behind that button that were non-obvious that made it a patentable idea. And when you're developing a product, like any sort of product, you're going to have to solve some challenges from the time where you have this really great idea to the time where you've actually got a prototype that people can actually start to see. And those solutions to some of those challenges that you have developing it, that is the stuff often that you can end up being able to patent. So I covered this earlier, but I'll sort of touch this again. When you start going down the path of a patent, it's got to be non-obvious. So it's got to be something that not everybody's just going to think of doing. There's got to be some example of it. You actually have to prove that it works. So I couldn't come back tomorrow and say I'm going to patent a cold fusion reactor if I can't prove how it works and that it works. You can't really patent it. You actually have to have something that actually is going to work out there in the world. And then finally, there's got to be no previous examples that you can cite of where where this has actually been done before. So this is where you actually have to start doing the research. There's a good tool out there. There's actually a number of good tools online. Yeah. So Google has an actually really great tool out there. It's a Google patent search, and you can do a search on a number of different keywords and pretty quickly come back and try to figure out what things actually exist out there, what's been patented, what hasn't been. And it's going to take, unfortunately, a lot of reading, a lot of a lot of you'll get to learn the construction of patents pretty well, because there's lots of claims that you have to see exactly what was claimed inside of the patent. And so you're going to want to go through there and make sure that nobody else is doing anything close, or doing something exactly like what you're trying to talk about. But you're also going to, like any of those patents that you end up finding that are close but not exactly what you're trying to do, bookmark those, because you'll need them later. Because if you end up going back and doing a patent on your own, you have to prove that there is no other existing patents. So they want you to list off, here are all the other similar but not exact patents out there, just to show that you've done your work, you've actually done.
When researching, Bruce, one of the things that just as humans we tend to do is we get really laser focused on trying to prove our theory. And I think one of the important things for companies researching for a startup is the understanding that they really need to take the other viewpoint and research from the angle of trying to disprove their business model, their product, their plan, because that's how the venture capitalists are going to look at it. If someone's trying to offer you funding, they are going to do their due diligence to make sure that this is a unique, valid opportunity, and they're going to be looking for reasons to disprove it rather than confirm what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. When you go in and you're actually doing your pitch, they are looking for what is the hole in this theory, because they don't want to invest a whole lot of money in you just to find this stuff out afterwards. So they're going to pick at every little nit. So first of all, when you actually get to the point where you're there and you're pitching to them, you're gonna get frustrated with all these stupid little questions. Don't let that show. Just that's what they do. That's what they have to do in order to be able to do their job. But yeah, they're gonna be trying to figure out where the holes are in your theory. What is good to do from that standpoint is you need to start doing some of your homework in advance as well. And part of this is to actually test your idea with some other people out there in the market, who your actual customers would end up being. So if you know some other people in that role, maybe in other companies and things like that, go out, tell them your idea, find out what they think, find out what their concerns are. And you need to hone that story down really, really well to the point where you can deliver it and they feel comfortable with it. And if you can get a couple of people out there to say, yeah, God, I wish that, if something like that existed, I'd buy it tomorrow. If you can get to that point, then those people can actually be references for you when you actually go out and you start doing your pitch to your VCs. The VC is going to want to know, because they're paid to be experts on business, but they don't know your business. They don't know what you know, and so that's kind of what they're buying as well. They're buying your expertise in that specific set of the field. So they're trying to get that information from you, and you got to present this to them. So they will take that. But if you can show that here are 10 potential customers who are really interested in this as well, if we actually have that, that's going to make them feel a lot more comfortable. But that's also not going to shortcut you. When you actually go out there and you do that pitch, they're going to want to do their own due diligence because they don't know that the 10 people that you just lined up as your character witness, haven't been paid under the table to speak nicely about you. So they're going to take their previous portfolio companies and they're going to say, can you talk to this guy and see whether or not what he says actually makes any sense? So the nice thing is that if you get used to talking to other people in the market and you get that entire pitch really well defined, when the time comes to start making that same story for one of the VC's portfolio investments, and they're trying to evaluate you for whether or not you actually have something, you'll have that down. You'll be able to recite that, that business case and that executive summary, like it's secondhand. You'll have it memorized by that point in time. So that's one of the other reasons why it's good to be able to do this, is it familiarizes you with the story and exactly how to present your story. You need to get that really nice and crisp.
So after you've done your research, in almost every case, it's going to be important to engage a real patent attorney. They'll help you finesse the scope of your claim. They're going to help really probably do an additional level of due diligence to make sure that you are prepared to step in front of a venture capitalist and pull the legal aspects of that in. Again, repeating Drew's from earlier, we're not lawyers. We don't play lawyers on TV. So, that patent attorney will become a key part of your plans. And remember that overly broad claims aren't going to be enforceable, but also overly specific claims leave a lot of room for infringement. So it's going to be important to have that patent attorney viewpoint to help you put the right scope around your patent.
Absolutely. And an example I give you, and again, just to reemphasize it a third time, your lawyers are going to be your best friends. So get some decent lawyers in there. A patent, you can actually go in, asking for your seed round or an angel round or even your Series A without having the patents if you feel like your idea is actually patentable, because that can be one of the reasons why you need that round of funding, because getting a patent is going to be a lengthy process. It's going to be an expensive process and not necessarily something that you want to fund out of your own pocket. But if you can do as much homework about it beforehand as possible, that's good. And your lawyer is going to help you fine tune, as John said, fine tune exactly where to put that. Think about a patent as being like a no trespassing sign. You can put your no trespassing sign at your front door, but if somebody walks in and just kind of puts their foot, just inside the door, they could argue that, I wasn't really trespassing. I was just going in there to try to see if there's somebody in there. If you put it at your fence as opposed to at your front door, by the time somebody is on your front porch, they're definitely trespassing. There's no question about it at all. So you don't want to make it so specific that it's at your front door, but you want it a little bit out there, knowing that people are going to probably go maybe a little bit past, but you want it so that when they're actually doing infringement, you can actually call them on it and it's actually meaningful. And on the other extreme, if you put your no trespassing sign at the city limits, nobody's going to take it seriously either. So that's the problem with a lot of these, what they call patent trolls. They'll try to patent the entire world, and unfortunately, way too many companies end up crumbling to the threats of their lawyers, and they don't in a circumstance where there's a patent troll, it's best for everybody to kind of close ranks and not succumb to there, because as soon as they get one person to agree to a settlement, it makes it that much easier for everybody else.
So a few thoughts on just the concept of good ideas and patents here, and really taking some quotes from the world around us. John C. Maxwell said, "Ideas have a short shelf life. You must act on them before the expiration date." And I think that's really an important idea for startup companies, because if you've got a great idea, it won't be long before someone else has a similar idea and they'll run out there and patent it as well. So once you've got that idea, you need to execute on it very, very quickly. Another important one out there, I think Derek Sivers hits the topic directly. He says, "To me, ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They're just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions." And again, famous from history, great ideas are just that. They're great ideas, but until action is applied, they'll never become anything substantial. So it's important that you act on the ideas, that you work through these processes, you do the due diligence, the research, put the time in, and start that business plan as soon as possible, because you don't want someone to take your good idea. Think back in your own life how many times you've thought, man, I wish I had come up with that, when something brand new comes out, and could have just been recently that, hey, that could have saved me hours of work, or that kind of thing. During your due diligence, it's not easy. It requires dedication, but if you devote that energy that you need to the research, something good will come of it. And that's kind of an irony, because even if you find that your idea really wasn't as good as you thought, the process of going through that research is very likely to uncover options that may give you a variation of your idea, or even generate entirely new ideas. So go through the process, do the work, take the time, do the research, and focus on what happens next.
Okay, so one thing that I'd like to do that would be just like a punctuation mark on the tail end of John's stuff there is when you go out there and you talk to a venture capitalist, um, they are talking to you for a reason, and that is that idea on how you can make it execute. They are looking to the money is easy to get. Money is all over the place. Good ideas that can be well executed aren't. And that's what they're counting on. That's why they are interested in talking to you. So keep that in mind. In closing here, a lot of work that you can do on the OnStart just to kind of test your idea, to think it through, get that to the point where you've got some of the key objections handled when you put them and commit those to your business plan. That work will all pay dividends as you go through this process. The more you can do on the OnStart, the more you're saving yourself, the more time, the more effort, the more energy that you're saving on the end part. So thank you guys for joining us. Again, if you found this content to be useful, please go down and like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments section. We'd love to read them. We're trying to build a community here. We'd like to help everybody in the new year capture that dream of doing that new startup. There's very few opportunities that you get like this where you can actually go out on this. So if you've got that good idea, we'd like to see you be successful with it. We'd love to help the next Zuckerberg or Jobs or whatever that ends up being out there.
Thanks for attending today, and look forward to seeing you on future episodes of the Startup Planner.